stumbling upon this was no coincidence. The everyday version of your mind, the one worried about daily chores, commuting, or keeping your devices charged, isn't responsible for leading you to this space. A far more ancient force guided you here. It is a presence that has always drifted just beneath your perceived reality, hiding underneath the mundane routines, the relentless noise, and the heavy identity you've been conditioned to accept. A timeless, incredibly exact intelligence reached past all those superficial layers to seat you right where you are at this very second. It acted with absolute certainty, recognizing a rare window of opportunity that has finally swung wide open, a portal that won't remain unlatched forever. Take a second to truly absorb that. Don't just intellectualize it, physically sense it. If you look inward with total honesty, you'll notice a distinct shift in the atmosphere right now. This isn't just another passing minute in your day. You are standing at a very real threshold, and your physical vessel inherently senses it. While your logical brain might still be processing, your cellular structure and your nervous system are already fully aware. Deep within the framework of your consciousness, a resonance was detected long before your critical mind could even decide if this video was worth watching. That magnetic draw, that profound inner whisper telling you this is different, none of it is made up. It isn't fantasy. It is the awakening of your monad. It is the everlasting, unbreakable, pure essence of your being, finally reacting to a frequency it has spent lifetimes waiting to hear. What happens tonight isn't merely symbolic. It isn't just a comforting spiritual quote to lean on when ordinary life feels empty. Tonight, a literal gateway unlocks within the very structure of your mind. This doorway has existed inside you since birth, remaining tightly shut. It wasn't locked away by malicious forces, bad luck, or the painful trials and confusions you've endured on your journey. It remained closed for one simple reason. Your readiness had not yet peaked. True readiness isn't an emotion. It's an energetic state. Specific doors remain firmly bolted until the soul standing before them vibrates at the exact matching frequency of whatever lies beyond. Your vibration recently underwent a massive shift. That is the true reason you are present. It explains why this specific message intersected your path on this particular night. Consequently, an inner knowing is warning you that the upcoming moments will permanently alter whoever you were before pressing play. The threshold is breached, and you are positioned right at the precipice. We no longer need to ask if you are prepared, because your arrival proves that you are. The real issue is whether you grasp the magnitude of what lies ahead. This is no trivial gateway. We aren't talking about a slight self-improvement or a subtle adjustment to your current personality. Crossing this line triggers an absolute, permanent realization of your truest identity. It shatters the roles you've played, the labels society gave you, and the heavy narrative woven from your past traumas, relationships, and triumphs. You will finally encounter the genuine you, the monad, the immortal spark of light, the entirety of the universe channeling itself through your unique, irreplaceable vibration. Once you step through and witness this not as abstract theory, but as breathing, undeniable reality, ignorance becomes impossible. You can never unsee the truth. Your previous state of existence will simply fall away. The former iteration of yourself will dissolve. It won't hurt, and it won't be a violent struggle, but it will be absolute. What emerges from the ashes is infinitely sharper, brighter, and fiercely authentic. The person you were yesterday will soon feel like a fading, distant dream. This is the purpose of tonight's encounter. This is the boundary you face, and we are going to cross it side by side. So, let us start at the very origin. We must clearly define what the monad actually is, as most only know it through scattered pieces of information. Perhaps you heard a snippet in a university lecture, spotted a vague mention in an occult book, or recall a fleeting phrase from an old article. These fractured glimpses of truth simply won't suffice. You require the complete tapestry. You must confront this concept just as boldly as you would a physical doorway. No more looking away. No more hesitant steps. You must look it dead in the eye, bringing the full force of your consciousness to bear. The monad transcends mere philosophical theory. It is the ultimate blueprint of your existence. To comprehend it, you cannot let it merely skim the surface of your intellect. You must allow the truth of it to sink deeply into every single stratum of your soul. Consider this your first step across the boundary. We must rewind the clock to an era before the cosmos arranged itself into the intricate web of galaxies, organic matter, sentient thought, and the very life you breathe today. Cast your mind back to a time prior to fragmentation, before the illusion of isolation became so deeply embedded in the human psyche that existing without it seems entirely unfathomable to the average mind. Prior to all of that, there was only what antiquity's great thinkers labeled the One, the Absolute, or the Monad. This was a condition of total, sovereign completeness. Nothing existed beyond its borders, for the concept of an outside did not even exist. Every conceivable thing, past, present, and future, dwelt within this genesis point. They were not scattered fragments or disjointed elements, but a seamless singularity of sheer radiance and unadulterated awareness. Plotinus, a towering figure in Western mysticism, captured this primordial reality with an unmatched elegance. He explained that this ultimate source is flawless precisely because it desires nothing, clings to nothing, and requires nothing. Its sheer magnitude simply cascades outward. Its infinite surplus effortlessly gives birth to all that is. This defines the true dawn of existence. It wasn't a calculated blueprint, a divine decree, or a cosmic architectural endeavor helmed by a distant god. Genesis is merely the spilling over of flawless infinity. The monad is so profoundly whole that its essence organically pours forth, much like a star that cannot suppress its own blinding glare. And this outpouring generates absolutely everything. Every plane of existence, every spectrum of thought, and every spirit that has ever drawn breath across any timeline or universe, all of it is the direct, uncontained runoff of that primordial, self-sustaining unity. Here is where abstract theory morphs into profound, personal revelation. You are not a byproduct manufactured away from that ultimate source and dropped onto this planet. You aren't a shattered shard desperately seeking a path back to the master crystal. You are not a lost puzzle piece trying to figure out where you fit in the grand scheme. You are the entirety of that original unity, currently functioning at a highly specific, localized coordinate. Your mind isn't a mere fraction of the sacred. It is the divine universe actively exploring itself through the completely unique, unrepeatable vantage point of your existence. The very things that make you distinct, the nuances of your perception, the flavor of your thoughts, the exact energetic signature that belongs to nobody else. These are not signs of your isolation from the Creator. Instead, your distinct persona is the exact mechanism the infinite uses to perceive itself. Allow this truth to move beyond intellectual logic and seep into your tangible, breathing reality. You aren't a slice of the whole. You are the entire cosmos vocalizing its brilliance through your exclusive perspective. Consequently, the monad isn't a prize to be won, a spiritual destination to seek, or an unfamiliar state you must learn to inhabit. It is your foundational identity. It exists beneath the narratives you spin, the traumas you bear, and the boundaries you falsely accept. Dig beneath the sedimentary layers of a lifetime spent feeling disconnected and lost, and you will find your true essence completely whole. It has always been flawless. It is immune to injury, resistant to decay, and impossible to misplace. However, it can be forgotten. The vast majority of the human journey, what ancient mystics termed the dyad, or the realm of polarization and division, is exactly this state of slumber. It is a slow, insidious fading of memory, where a perfectly whole entity begins to feel fractured. We construct egos built on insecurities, rivalries, and an agonizing thirst for outside approval. We waste decades hunting the horizon for a treasure that never actually left our own pockets. You know this sensation intimately, don't you? That endless quest, that grasping in the dark, the quiet but relentless hum in the background, whispering that something isn't quite right. No matter your wealth, accolades, or worldly adventures, an unfillable void stubbornly remains. That emptiness is not a psychological defect. It doesn't mean you are broken or flawed. Rather, it is the profound magnetic pull of your true genesis. It is the monad calling you back to center. That profound yearning, that indescribable ache residing deep within your chest, the one utterly immune to worldly cures, isn't an injury. It is your internal compass. And this evening, that very compass has guided you directly to this gateway. You have arrived at the precise intersection where the amnesia dies and true recollection sparks to life. If these concepts are resonating deeply with your inner truth, pause for a second to like this video and subscribe. You were intentionally drawn to this space, and much more insight is coming your way. Now, let us delve further into the exact shifts occurring within your mind at this very moment. For we are not merely spinning poetic metaphors about mystical ideas. We are dealing with a concrete, precise, energetic mechanism. Grasping how this mechanism functions is absolutely crucial, as it provides the necessary leverage to fling the gateway wide open. Passive listening won't turn the lock. The portal unlocks solely through active realization. When your conscious comprehension of the threshold becomes sharp enough, that very clarity acts as the skeleton key. Consider the realm of quantum mechanics. Stick with me, as this scientific detour has profound implications for your spiritual state. Quantum theory outlines a phenomenon known as superposition. This is a condition where a particle occupies several potential states at the exact same time, remaining fluid until the act of observation or measurement forces it to settle into one concrete reality. Before it is observed, the particle isn't definitively this or that. It is everything it could possibly be, all at once. Every potential state is equally valid, equally present, and equally true to the particle's nature. Then, a catalyst occurs. An interaction, a gaze, a brush with an observer. In a fraction of a second, the superposition shatters. All the swirling possibilities vanish, save for one. A single outcome solidifies. One potential state transforms into the only state. This mirrors the exact process unfolding within your awareness right now. You have been living in psychological superposition. You've been carrying multiple, conflicting iterations of yourself concurrently. There is the fractured self, desperately seeking answers. There is the awakening self, beginning to recall its divine origin. There is the self that has already crossed the finish line, and the self paralyzed by fear of what that ultimate crossing might demand. All these versions have existed side by side in your mind. Each one tugs you in a different direction, generating a very specific flavor of inner friction, a subtle tension you've likely endured for years without quite knowing why. It's that haunting feeling of straddling two worlds. It is the suffocating sensation that you've outgrown your current life, coupled with the anxiety of not knowing what the new life entails. You are caught between the magnetic lure of the unknown and the heavy anchor of the familiar. That is superposition. That is the quantum reality of a soul hovering at the edge of a breakthrough but hesitating to jump. So, what triggers the collapse? What forces this multidimensional tension to resolve into a single, undeniable truth? It is exposure to the precise matching frequency. It is the moment when the consciousness waiting at the door collides with the exact energetic signal radiating from the other side. When that profound resonance occurs, the door swings open, the superposition ends, and one clear reality locks into place. This transmission serves as that frequency. This is the catalyst happening right now. As you absorb these words, you aren't just consuming media. You are participating in a vibrational event. That ancient, nameless core within you, the essence that predates your personal history, your ego, and your worldly labels already understands this perfectly. It has been holding its breath for this exact encounter, and contact has finally been initiated. The locks are already turning. However, before we fully cross over, it is vital to comprehend the landscapes on both sides of this divide. To blindly step through a portal without grasping what you abandon and what you embrace isn't a transition. It's a reckless stumble, and this moment is far too momentous for fumbling. This crossing demands your absolute lucidity, your unbroken presence, and the courage to examine both realities without turning away. On this current side of the gate, the realm you've inhabited your entire life, exists a specific paradigm of thought. Philosophers termed it the dyad. It is the sphere of duality, of you versus me, defined by the agonizing experience of being a solitary shard in a chaotic universe of other disconnected shards. Here, your sense of self is a patchwork stitched together from external feedback. It is molded by the rejections that conditioned you to shrink. It is sustained by endless loops of comparison, judgment, and the exhausting daily audit of whether you are achieving, producing, or simply being enough. In this realm, the hunt is perpetual because the prize is perpetually dangled just out of reach. Make no mistake, the monad is here. It is omnipresent and cannot be erased. Yet, from this vantage point, it feels remote, a distant mountain peak you are struggling to climb, rather than the ground beneath your feet. This side of the portal isn't malicious, nor is it a cosmic error. It represents a vital, profoundly educational phase of spiritual evolution. The dyad, with all its alienation, yearning, and hard-won wisdom forged through the fires of contrast, is the necessary classroom. It is the precise mechanism the monad utilizes to explore and comprehend its own infinite nature through the localized experiences of its fractured parts. Duality is not an enemy actively opposing your true nature. It was simply the universe's chosen vehicle for self-exploration. However, your time in this particular classroom has expired. You have extracted every ounce of wisdom this phase had to offer. You intimately understand the internal ache of isolation. You have endured the exhausting cycles of grasping, striving, building, watching it all crumble, and desperately starting over. That chapter is now closed. The curriculum is complete, and the doorway to your next evolution stands wide open. Once you cross this threshold, the entire architecture of your identity flips. Rather than assembling your self-worth from external pieces, you anchor into your power from the inside out. Rather than hunting the horizon for a sense of completion, you awaken to the profound perfection that never actually left you. You will stop cobbling together a persona out of society's restrictive narratives, other people's fleeting opinions, and the deep scars of your past traumas. Instead of that exhausting hustle, you will simply breathe as the monad. You will perceive yourself as the entire cosmos, channeling its immense power through your specific viewpoint, completely abandoning the illusion that you are a broken shard trying to glue itself back together. Do not mistake this for the death of your unique self. This is perhaps the greatest fallacy regarding spiritual awakening. When people hear terms like oneness or unity, they falsely panic, picturing their personality melting away into a bland, featureless cosmic soup. They fear losing their quirks, their passions, and their distinct flavor, assuming they will be swallowed by a generic, textureless void of universal consciousness that could not be further from the truth. Beyond this gateway, your individuality doesn't vanish, it sharpens. Your personal energetic signature becomes infinitely clearer and more potent. Why? Because it is finally stripped of the static created by a fractured ego. It is no longer suffocated beneath the heavy blankets of societal pressure and fear-driven masks. Across this threshold, you become fiercely, authentically you. You operate as the infinite source shining brightly through the unrepeatable prism of your life. Embracing unity doesn't mute your personal song. It turns the volume all the way up. This is the reality beckoning you forward. This is the treasure awaiting you just past the door. And this is exactly why this specific night is so critical. It cannot be casually swapped out for tomorrow or next week. The portal currently available to you, triggered by the unique alignment of your awareness and your exact level of spiritual maturity, will not remain unlocked forever. Quantum states resolve, windows of opportunity expire. This gateway is unlatched right now solely because you have navigated to the perfect juncture in your timeline to claim your birthright. Yet, merely arriving isn't enough. You must consciously walk through. Staring at an open door does not equal a completed journey. You have to take the step, And that leap demands a crystal-clear understanding of why this exact second is the tipping point. To grasp this, look at how awareness evolves. It mirrors a scientific phenomenon known as a phase transition. Consider the nature of water. Just slightly above freezing, it remains a fluid, shapeless liquid, lazily molding itself to its container. But at precisely 0 degrees Celsius, a radical transformation occurs. It doesn't happen slowly or in tiny, incremental steps. In a flash, the molecular structure radically reorganizes. The fluid hardens into solid ice. It adopts an entirely new form with radically different rules, behaviors, and potential. The water didn't slowly practice becoming ice over several days. It hit a definitive, mathematical breaking point. In one singular heartbeat, its entire reality was rewritten. Let's pause here for a moment of reflection. Have you ever experienced a defining, singular event in your life where you felt, without a shadow of a doubt, that you had passed a point of no return? A time when your reality shifted instantly and totally, with zero gradual build-up, when you hovered at a precipice, decided to step forward, and physically felt your past vanish as a new future instantly solidified beneath your feet. Drop down into the comments and share that exact sensation. Don't write out the whole backstory, just describe the raw feeling of that leap. Another soul scrolling through this space is currently hesitating at their own cliff edge, and your specific words might be the exact vibrational key that gives them the courage to jump. Your inner awareness operates on the exact same principle. You don't slowly morph into the realization of your divine monadic state. You hit a breaking point. Once your spiritual maturity, life experiences, and readiness align perfectly, a sudden and total reorganization takes place. The shattered, ego-driven identity you once thought was your absolute truth is suddenly exposed as a mere stepping stone. Meanwhile, the intrinsic unity that was always there, hidden in plain sight, suddenly becomes the most glaringly obvious reality of your existence. You step through the portal, and you are reborn on the other side. You are hovering at that critical freezing point this very second. The shift is imminent, and the proof is in how you've been feeling lately, perhaps for days, weeks, or months. That lingering sensation of standing on the precipice of something massive. The tension of shedding your past self while your future self hasn't fully materialized. That feeling is not anxiety. It is simply your soul's radar detecting the nearness of the gateway. The transition isn't approaching. It is happening now. Let me illustrate this by telling you about a soul named Mira. For her entire adult life, Mira played by society's rules, chasing what the world deemed a meaningful existence. She accumulated milestones like a person gathering shiny rocks from a riverbed, convinced each one was precious the moment she picked it up. She lugged around a heavy, growing sack filled with career accolades, relationships, social status, and a meticulously crafted persona that everyone else constantly validated. Yet, a persistent, unnameable ache always haunted her. No matter how many rocks she added to her pile, a quiet force would jolt her awake at 3 a.m. with a startling clarity that vanished by dawn. It would randomly strike during mundane chores, a dizzying sensation of a massive, unseen presence pushing against the fragile bubble of her ordinary reality. Begging for entry, she misdiagnosed this feeling as panic. She labeled it restlessness and chronic dissatisfaction. To cure it, she frantically gathered more rocks, more achievements, more worldly experiences, more connections, desperately seeking more. But the internal hum only grew louder. Eventually, she hit a highly specific, unrepeatable breaking point where the sheer weight of her fabricated life paralyzed her. She didn't consciously decide to stop. It happened instantaneously, exactly like a phase transition, completely and irreversibly. One day she was carrying the burden, and the next, she was staring at the debris of her life from a radically detached vantage point. With blinding clarity, she realized none of those accomplishments were what her soul actually craved. Every single rock, every carefully built layer of her identity was just a panicked reaction to the ache in her chest. She had been trying to plug a hole from the outside, failing to realize that the space wasn't a void at all. The space was a doorway, completely unequipped to process this revelation. She had no vocabulary or map for this new spiritual terrain. She only knew, with a quiet, undeniable finality, that her previous existence was definitively over. It wasn't a tragic ending, but a peaceful one, like closing a long, exhausting novel you finally finished reading. You aren't sad it's over. You are simply done. Driven by pure instinct, she walked away. She left the pile of rocks where it sat and physically walked out of her constructed reality. She wandered until she found herself on an unfamiliar forest trail, heading toward an unseen destination. At a certain point, her feet rooted to the ground. She didn't consciously choose to halt. She was stopped by a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The air grew heavy with a profound stillness, a silent recognition of standing at the edge of the indescribable. She simply stood there for a long time, refusing to analyze it, refusing to name it, and refusing to look back at the life she left behind. She was just deeply present at the threshold, and in that suspended moment, an inexplicable shift occurred, a transformation regarding that deep, restless ache in her chest that she would spend the rest of her life trying and failing to put into words. That relentless pressure, which had pushed against the fragile boundaries of her everyday existence for years, finally gave way. It didn't tear open like a painful wound. It swung wide like a window catching a breeze, or a grand gateway unlocking. What flooded through the opening wasn't a foreign energy. It was profoundly, shockingly familiar. It was her, but not the artificial persona she had painstakingly assembled. It wasn't the identity cobbled together from milestones, burdens, and the mirrored opinions of society. It was the eternal essence that predated all of that, the core presence that remained constant through every era of her life, every costume she wore, and every narrative she spun. This true self didn't rely on that heavy sack of rocks to validate its existence. It was real long before the burden existed, would outlast it, and was vividly alive right there, standing on an uncharted trail in an unknown forest. It was the monad, finally witnessing its own reflection. In that profound silence, she didn't morph into a stranger. For the very first time, she became authentically, unapologetically, herself. The distinction between changing into someone else and stepping fully into who you truly are, that is the exact difference between the ground you currently stand on and the territory you are about to enter. Mira eventually walked back home. Her accumulated life, the proverbial pile of stones, was still waiting. Yet, her connection to it had been permanently rewired. She no longer existed inside the burden, chained to it for her sense of worth. She operated as the monad navigating a physical realm. She still interacted with her life's pile, but merely because it was the current backdrop for her infinite soul's expression, not her defining trait. The heavy stones didn't vanish, but they lost their weight. Why? Because she stopped carrying them on her back and simply allowed them to exist beside her. Shifting from carrying a burden to merely being in a relationship with it, that is the ultimate transition from the dyad to the monad. This is what it means to cross over. It doesn't require bulldozing your physical life. It requires a radical shift in how you perceive it. Your personal traits aren't erased. They are recognized as brilliant facets of the universal whole, rather than isolated fragments. Standing in her completely ordinary kitchen, looking at her mundane belongings with awakened eyes, Mira experienced a sensation she hadn't felt since infancy. She felt entirely at home, not in the house, but within herself, safely anchored in the monad, the indestructible, sovereign unity that had silently accompanied her through every chaotic chapter, without ever taking a scratch. You are Mira. You are the exhausted traveler hauling that sack of rocks. You are the spirit hesitating at the edge of the unknown path, sensing the magnitude of the threshold. You may not see the other side yet, but an ancient, intuitive knowing confirms it is exactly where you belong. The doorway is unbarred. It is time to walk through. I will now guide you through an experiential shift. This isn't a mere mindfulness trick or a self-help method. It is an active crossing of the threshold. I need your absolute presence. Set aside the cynical, analytical brain that wants to judge if this is working. Call forward that primal, timeless aspect of yourself that led you to this video. That ancient essence knows exactly how to navigate this. It has waited lifetimes for this exact moment. Sink into stillness. I don't mean silencing your thoughts. Minds are designed to think, and they will continue to do so. Instead, seek the profound quiet that exists beneath the mental chatter. It is a pure field of awareness, acting as the open space where your thoughts arise and dissolve. Gently lower your focus into that foundational space. Don't force it. Just temporarily loosen your grip on the ego that constantly defends and defines itself, letting your consciousness sink to the deepest bedrock. Tune into the raw texture of right now. Ignore your physical room or the device playing this transmission. Notice only the pure essence of your own awareness. Grasp the simple, unshakable fact that you are aware. This witnessing presence isn't generated by your brain, nor is it a byproduct of your physical body or past traumas. It predates all of it. It was there before your story started, and it will remain when your physical form fades. It is the monad itself, breathing through your specific lens. Anchor yourself there. Recognize the profound gap between the canvas of your awareness and the paint upon it. Your anxieties, memories, daily plans, and fleeting emotions, those are merely the paint. They appear within the awareness. They ripple across it. They simply dissolve back into the void. The underlying awareness, however, remains entirely still. It does not spike or fade. It simply is. It is the permanent, unshakable foundation of every single thing you have ever felt, seen, or endured. It has never abandoned you, not even in those dark hours when you felt utterly adrift and disconnected. That presence is the monad. It is your truest self, existing on a plane far deeper than any narrative you've constructed about your life. Now, I want you to closely examine something. Pay attention to the artificial barrier you've been putting up between you and that pure awareness. Notice the deeply ingrained, almost robotic reflex of treating your consciousness as an object you are observing, rather than the core of what you actually are. Recognize your habit of acting as a detached spectator to your own mind. That manufactured distance, that persistent illusion of being separated from your own foundational essence, is the very definition of the dyad. It is the root of your internal fragmentation. It is the exact method the monad uses to induce its own amnesia. So, very softly, with zero force or theatrics, close that gap. You don't achieve this by taking action. You do it by ceasing to act. Drop the exhausting habit of holding your awareness at arm's length. Let the spectator and the spectacle merge and realize they are one and the same. Let the divide vanish. This is the true crossing. This is the precise split second the superposition shatters. This is the ultimate phase transition. The door swings wide, and you step across the threshold. This transformation isn't reserved for some distant future where you are finally healed enough, wise enough, or spiritually prepared enough. It happens now, in this exact breath, utilizing the exact state of mind you currently possess. The monad does not demand that you level up before it embraces you. It only asks that you stop pretending it is something separate from your own skin. Let this revelation sink in, not as a philosophical concept to ponder, but as a lived reality. Absorb the blunt, undeniable truth, the vast awareness in which your entire existence unfolds, the silent witness to every triumph, heartbreak, and moment of utter confusion. That awareness isn't a possession, it is your identity. It is the monad. It is the infinite whole. It is the unbreakable, sovereign, perfect bedrock of your being. And it has never flickered out, not for a single heartbeat, not through any of your struggles. Feel the profound shift as that truth takes root. Sense the immense space that breathes into your chest when the illusion of distance collapses. This doesn't feel like winning a prize. It feels like you finally stopped bleeding energy. It is the exquisite relief of arriving at a destination you never actually left. It is the monad waking up to its own face in the mirror. Rest here for a moment. Anchor into this reality. Allow it to be infinitely more tangible than your pile of worldly burdens. Let it eclipse the tired narratives of your past and silence the anxious, fragile ego that has worked so frantically to keep your life from falling apart. Allow the monad to be the absolute center of your reality right now, because it always has been. It was just the most ignored element in the room. You have officially crossed the threshold. You have arrived. Now, we must explore how the rules change on this side of the gate. Because arriving isn't the grand finale, it is the genesis of an entirely new expedition. This journey no longer scrambles desperately from emptiness to fulfillment. It flows effortlessly from a state of perfect wholeness into vibrant expression. You are no longer driven by a frantic hunt for a missing piece. Instead, your life becomes the organic, joyous overflow of a consciousness that knows it is already complete. Plotinus termed this the return, or the epistrophe, the majestic turning of the soul back toward its origin. Yet, he was adamant that returning does not mean renouncing the physical world. The awakened monad doesn't flee to a mountaintop. Instead, it engages with reality on entirely different terms. It dances through the chaos of human experience, relationships, and change not as a beggar seeking scraps of validation, but as a sovereign king delighting in the game. The world doesn't vanish once you cross over. Instead, it finally becomes real. You can genuinely be present in it because you've stopped using your environment and the people in it as crutches to prop up your sense of worth. Consider what this looks like in practice. Look at your current relationships. Prior to crossing the gate, almost every connection you forged carried a hidden tax. A subtle, desperate plea to be validated, understood, and loved enough to prove you mattered. This dynamic wasn't a character flaw. It was simply the reality of living in the dyad. This is the standard blueprint for human connection when operating from a fractured state. When you view yourself as a broken piece, it's instinctual to latch on to other broken pieces, hoping that together you might mimic the appearance of a whole. These bonds can be profoundly beautiful, but they can also be agonizing. Yet, they consistently carry an underlying current of desperation, making the relationship feel far more burdensome than it ever should. Once you cross the threshold, the desire for connection doesn't evaporate, but its entire foundation shifts. You stop using relationships as a mirror to prove your completeness, because you no longer harbor any doubts about your inherent wholeness. When the frantic need for external validation burns away, what's left is infinitely more expansive and authentic. It becomes a pure, uncomplicated yearning to share space with another soul, to truly know them and be known in return, to offer love and receive it freely. You engage not to fill a void, but because connection is simply one of the majestic ways the monad experiences the joy of witnessing itself in another vessel. Love finally becomes genuine, stripped of its former double duty as a defense mechanism against feelings of unworthiness. Now, consider your life's work, your ultimate purpose, the reason you incarnated into this specific body, armed with your unique talents. During this exact era, when standing on the unawakened side of the gate, purpose feels like a missing object you must hunt down. It becomes a frantic question the ego constantly screams. What is my utility? What am I meant to do? How do I earn my right to exist? This scavenger hunt is perpetually exhausting because it fundamentally misinterprets the goal. It treats purpose as an external prize to be discovered, rather than an internal truth demanding to be unleashed. Beyond the gateway, you realize that your purpose isn't a destination. It is your identity. The monad vibrates at a specific frequency, and that exact frequency is your purpose. The highly individualized way you perceive the world, the unique details you catch that others miss, the natural gifts that flow effortlessly from your distinct mindset that is your reason for being. It isn't a job title you need to hunt for and then desperately try to embody. It is your foundational nature, waiting to be acknowledged and allowed to pour outward. This expression flows with the same ease as sunlight. A star doesn't agonize over how to shine. It simply radiates, because that is its biological reality. On the awakened side of the threshold, expressing your true self feels exactly like that. It is effortless, not meaning it requires zero physical energy. As the sun is constantly executing the massive labor of nuclear fusion, it is effortless in the sense that your actions are in perfect, seamless harmony with your true nature, rather than constantly fighting against it. Let's address the fear. A very specific flavor of dread has likely shadowed you recently. The terror of making a mistake, of missing your chance, of being too late or fundamentally inadequate. You might fear stepping through the door only to find a hollow void waiting on the other side. This fear is completely valid and shouldn't be ignored. It is simply the ego's biological reaction to nearing the exit. Your fragmented self instinctively knows that crossing the threshold means its own demise, and like any living organism, the ego fights viciously to survive. It will manufacture doubt, conjure anxiety, and present highly logical arguments suggesting you should delay the leap. It will whisper that you need to study more, heal more, or prepare better before taking the plunge. But you must understand this crucial fact, that fear reveals absolutely nothing about what lies beyond the gate. It only provides data about the ego. It is the sound of your false identity panicking at the threat of its own extinction. And that extinction is not a danger to the real you. The death of the fragmented self isn't a tragedy. It is the ultimate prison break. That brittle identity you've spent decades defending, constantly policing, and exhausting yourself to maintain it, was never who you truly were. It was merely a theatrical costume. It was a required vehicle to navigate the lessons of duality. But the curriculum is finished. The scene is over, and it is time to take off the mask. The fear you feel is simply the costume refusing to be unzipped. Let it thrash, let it resist, and then step across the line anyway. The window of opportunity is fully open, but the hinges are already groaning. This isn't a punishment from a cruel universe, nor is it an artificial deadline. It is simply the physics of a spiritual threshold. The exact alignment of consciousness that makes this leap possible right now is dynamic and alive. It won't hold this perfect pose forever. The spiritual momentum that carried you to this video is real, potent, and entirely sufficient. But it demands action. Unused readiness doesn't politely wait. It decays. It warps into the bitter memory of a moment when the door was open, and you refused to walk through. And if you collect enough of those uncrossed thresholds, they will forge the heaviest, most crushing stone in your entire burden. This isn't meant to frighten you. It is simply the cold, hard science of spiritual evolution. It is the quantum mechanics of a soul's transition. The quantum limbo you currently occupy, standing perfectly poised at the doorway but hesitating to step through, is about to shatter. The only variable left is the outcome. Will you fall forward into the magnificent realization of your monadic truth, or retreat to the suffocating confines of the dyad? Remember, if you go backward, you will carry the agonizing new burden of knowing you stared at the exit and chose to walk away. You haven't navigated this arduous path just to surrender at the finish line. Ancient esoteric traditions implicitly grasped this urgency. The secretive initiates of Pythagoras, the mystics of the Alexandrian schools, and the Neoplatonic scholars who studied Plotinus all recognized a fundamental spiritual law. True initiation cannot be postponed. When the portal finally unlocks, that very event is your command to move. It isn't an artifact to be analyzed, nor is it a theory to study while you beg the universe for more preparation time. You must cross. The Pythagoreans held a timeless maxim that has echoed across millennia because of its undeniable truth. The beginning is half of the whole. Taking that first step is the true genesis, and that genesis is unfolding right at this very second. By absorbing this transmission and standing fully conscious at the threshold, completely aware of what lies beyond your transition has already begun. The doorway is completely unbarred. The phase shift is actively happening. All that is required now is your absolute, undeniable, full-body surrender to the process. Give it your consent. Say yes. You don't need to speak it aloud. Whisper it deep within the silent sanctuary where the monad resides, far beneath your racing thoughts. beneath your anxieties, and beneath the fragile ego that is desperately trying to shield you from an evolution it simply cannot comprehend. In that sacred stillness, say yes, and feel the energetic tectonic plates of your reality shift the moment you do. Ancient mystics referred to this profound shift as the great work of alchemy. While the grueling preparation might consume decades or span multiple lifetimes, the ultimate transmutation occurs in a single, breathless fraction of a second. Base metals don't slowly morph into gold over weeks. They hit a critical, exact thermal threshold symbolizing the sudden realization of your divine nature, and the metamorphosis is instantaneous and total. You are existing in that exact, explosive fraction of a second right now. Consider the profound insight the philosopher Leibniz offered regarding the monad, a revelation most academics completely overlook. He famously stated that monads are windowless. This means your core essence absorbs absolutely nothing from the external environment. Every realization, every sensation, and every facet of your being blossoms purely from the inside out. You aren't a blank canvas observing a separate, external world. Your reality is the continuous, self-generating projection of your own internal completeness. Apply this staggering truth to your daily existence. The events, social ties, and trials you always assumed were happening to you from the outside, none of it is an external force acting upon you. It is the direct manifestation of your own monadic vibration interacting with the universe, weaving the holographic tapestry you call your life. You are not a helpless victim of circumstance. You are the sovereign architect unfolding your unique frequency into physical space. This isn't solipsism. It doesn't mean other people are illusions or that the universe is just a hallucination. Other souls are also entirely real, operating as their own monads. Yet, the specific flavor of your reality, the unique synchronicities you attract, the exact challenges you face, and the specific energy you magnetize is entirely generated by your inner frequency. When that frequency upgrades from the shattered anxiety of the dyad to the awakened wholeness of the monad, your entire external projection radically alters. The universe crafted by a fully realized monad operates on entirely different physics than the reality built by an amnesiac ego. This is the tangible, real-world reward of crossing the line. This is what permanently changes. It isn't merely a subjective internal peace. Your external landscape transforms. The caliber of your connections, the magnetism of your opportunities, and the effortless flow of daily miracles, everything shifts because it is all born from your frequency, and your frequency has just leveled up. The phase transition is complete. The superposition has resolved into a new, undeniable state of being, and the reality now taking shape around you is the glorious domain of a monad that has finally remembered its own face. Drop a note in the comments and let me know. Where in your current reality are you staring down a threshold? I'm not talking about a challenge from your past. I mean the edge you are balancing on right now, in this very season of your life. Name the transition that is demanding your consent. Simply vocalizing the boundary you face is, in itself, the first act of walking through it. Understand this deeply. From this point forward, there is no retreat. Awakening to your monadic identity is a one-way street. Yes, you will experience temporary amnesia. There will be days when outdated, fractured habits flare up and your fearful ego tries to snatch back the steering wheel. That is completely normal. It is a standard part of the integration process. However, you can never truly unknow the truth you've just touched. Once this doorway is breached, it seals shut behind you. You can peer backward through the glass and view your former life with startling clarity, but you cannot slip back into that old skin as if the awakening never occurred. The previous matrix has shattered. Your new reality is locked in. The phase transition is absolute. Do not mourn this as a loss. This irreversible shift is exactly what the ancient mystics heralded as the ultimate destination of the human soul. It is the moment the grand epistrophe, the divine return, becomes permanent. You have pushed so far past the boundary that the magnetic pull of your innate wholeness now vastly overpowers the gravitational drag of your former fractured self. You have finally reached the spiritual coordinate, where being anchored in your truth feels far more natural than wandering in the dark. You are standing on that exact coordinate right now. You have crossed over, and the ground you are currently occupying marks the genesis of a radically different relationship with your own soul. I want you to deeply feel this next truth, not just process it logically. You are not alone here. The act of crossing the threshold can often feel isolating because the gateway unlocks exclusively for you, matching your unique frequency and exact level of readiness. Yet, countless other souls have been drawn to this very transmission, standing at this exact energetic boundary, feeling the precise same vibrational shift. Realizing your monadic nature doesn't banish you to a lonely mountaintop. It weaves you into a profoundly deeper connection with others. This new bond doesn't resemble the toxic connections of the dyad, where broken people cling to each other seeking a cure for their emptiness. Instead, awakened monads connect by recognizing their shared, underlying divinity. It is the breathtaking experience of locking eyes with another soul who has braved the same crossing and claimed the exact same truth. This is the hidden community residing on this side of the door. We aren't bound by dogmatic beliefs, rigid rituals, or superficial identity tags. We are united purely by mutual recognition. We see that each of us is the infinite universe expressing itself through a wildly unique, irreplaceable lens. We understand that when fully realized souls collide, it is never a coincidence. It is the universe brilliantly orchestrating a meeting with itself, recognizing its own infinite reflection in another face. If this message has struck a chord within your bones, if the truth has settled in, the door has opened, and the transition has occurred during our time together, you are already a member of this collective. You didn't have to sign up. You simply had to wake up. This belonging requires zero external proof, no certificates, and no outside validation. It only asks that you persistently live from this awakened state. It asks that you consciously choose your inherent perfection over the illusion of brokenness, favoring the raw truth of who you are over the exhausting roles society handed you. You will require support on this path, not because you are weak, but because the physical process of integration is demanding. While the initial awakening happens in a blinding flash, rewiring your daily life, your habits, relationships, and creative output to align with this new frequency takes time and relentless consistency. You need a community capable of holding the mirror of truth for you on the days when your old ego violently tries to stage a coup. Surround yourself with fellow travelers who have crossed the line. Engage in dialogues rooted in profound realization rather than the frantic, endless searching of the past. Allow yourself to be truly witnessed by those who perceive your monadic essence, not just the societal mask you wear. In return, grant them that exact same profound gaze. This is arguably the most potent action a realized soul can perform in this world. By anchoring into your truth, you hold the vibration of absolute wholeness for those who are still hesitating at the doorway. You become for them exactly what this transmission has been for you, the precise vibrational key to their own awakening. This isn't a manufactured mission or a forced crusade. It is the organic byproduct of your transition. An awakened monad instinctively acts as a portal for humanity. You don't achieve this by preaching, converting, or dragging people toward the light. You achieve it simply by existing authentically. By occupying this state so fully, your mere presence acts like a struck tuning fork. Without any conscious effort or persuasion on your part, nearby souls tuned to that same pitch will spontaneously begin to hum in harmony. This is the ultimate gift awaiting you on this side of the line, and it isn't just for your benefit. It radiates into everyone you will ever meet. Whenever an unawakened mind brushes against a self-realized monad, an invisible frequency is transferred. The resonance sparks. The exit door suddenly comes into sharper focus for someone who was entirely blind to it yesterday. In the most literal sense, you become a living, breathing threshold. This is the authentic legacy the ancient mystery schools were protecting. They weren't hoarding classified intellectual data from the masses. They were guarding a living, vibrating frequency. This resonance has been passed from soul to soul, bridging centuries, empires, and lifetimes, sustained simply by awakened beings sharing space with those seeking the truth. You are now officially forged into this ancient, unsevered chain. You aren't merely a passive student receiving cosmic handouts. You are a vital, active node in an infinite network stretching back to the dawn of awareness and forward into the unseen future. Grasp the sheer gravity of that. Your personal breakthrough actively rewrites the collective quantum field. Every single soul that shatters the illusion makes the realization marginally easier for the rest of existence. This isn't poetic symbolism. It is the quantum mechanics of spiritual evolution. A state change in one fragment elevates the entire system. Your leap matters to the cosmos because you are the cosmos. The next phase, integration. So, what happens now? The threshold is crossed, but the expedition continues. The arrival was instantaneous, but integration is a lifelong practice, and this new terrain demands an entirely different toolkit. Navigating toward the gate required raw courage, a willingness to shed your old skin, and a readiness to embrace the unknown. Now that you are here, the ultimate requirement is consistency. It is the relentless, minute-by-minute decision to anchor into your unified truth, rather than sliding back into the comforting, familiar illusion of separation. Your old ego is a deeply entrenched operating system. Just because you installed a massive upgrade doesn't mean the old software instantly vanishes. It will continue to lurk in the background, trying to trigger ancient, fear-based loops. True integration is the daily practice of catching that outdated software trying to boot up and gently overriding it. No vicious self-criticism, no exhausting, desperate struggle. Just a clean, deliberate pivot back to the sovereign truth you now know. Yes, you will slip up. You will forget. That is not a failure. It is simply part of the curriculum. The monad does not demand flawless memory. It only asks for your continual return. Every time you catch yourself spiraling back into fragmented fear, use that very realization as a miniature gateway. Step back through it, over time, through thousands of these tiny, deliberate course corrections. Resting in your divine wholeness will finally become your permanent default. Your monadic essence now upgrades to become your frontline operating system, rather than a hidden background process. This is what the adventure looks like post-crossing. You are no longer chasing things you lack. Instead, you are embarking on a profound deepening into what you already embody. It is the process of letting this supreme realization bleed into every corner of your life. Your connections, your career, your art, your physical vessel, and your environment. You are stepping into the most literal manifestation of your ultimate truth. This path has no finish line. Not because you are doomed to wander, you have already firmly arrived, but because the monad's capacity for expression is boundless. The universe channeling itself through your unique prism is an endless wellspring of creation, discovery, and beauty. There is no upper limit to this awakening. There is no final quota where the infinite finally exhausts its self-exploration through your specific vibration and declares the journey over. The plunge goes on forever. And this depth is never a heavy weight. It is simply the cosmos joyfully discovering itself through your irreplaceable vantage point. You arrived at this exact juncture tonight, perhaps oblivious to the monumental boundary you were facing. An ancient force, predating your given name and humming beneath your conscious radar, navigated you here with a calculated patience that defies ordinary human logic. That guiding force was never an outside entity. It was your own monad. It was the cosmic whole orchestrating a rendezvous with its own reflection. The absolute deepest layer of your soul reached across time, cutting through the relentless noise of a chaotic world, and deliberately seated you here. It did this because the timing was flawless, and your frequency was primed. The lifelong, sometimes agonizing, yet entirely purposeful preparation of your consciousness is officially complete. You are now on the awakened side. The doorway is shut behind you. The old illusion has crumbled, and your new paradigm is absolute. The phase transition is finalized. You now breathe the air of a self-realized monad. You have graduated from the agony of isolation into the undeniable grace of unity. This isn't the finale of your story. It is the grand genesis of everything this awakened state permits. Imagine bonds built on mutual completeness rather than parasitic need. Imagine a life's work fueled by your natural essence rather than a frantic hunt for validation. Picture art and ideas spilling from a soul that no longer has to hustle to prove its worth. Envision locking eyes with fellow awakened minds, meeting not as lost searchers, but as sovereign equals. A reality actively sculpted by a frequency that finally knows its own power. All of this exists on this side of the line, and it is entirely accessible to you right now, not tomorrow, not when you feel you've healed enough or studied enough. Right now, in this very breath, the monad is who you are. The gate is in your rear-view mirror, and retreat is impossible. Take a deep, grounding breath. Tune into the raw texture of this exact second. Ignore the room you are sitting in and the screen you are watching. Zero in on the undeniable bedrock reality of your own awareness. Feel the monad, the indestructible spark of light, the infinite whole gazing out through the utterly unique lens of your life. This is you. It has always been you, and the amnesia is finally cured. You have made the crossing. As you walk forward, the living vibration of this truth cannot be hijacked or stolen. It won't evaporate the moment this video concludes, and your daily chores demand your attention. This isn't a fleeting emotional high that will eventually crash. It is a structural realization, and once a truth of this magnitude lands, it cannot be unlanded. It cements itself as your new baseline. It becomes the unbreakable foundation upon which the rest of your existence will be built. You may feel pulled to return to this transmission, as threshold crossings often reveal richer layers with every visit. When you do, come to it in a space of pure stillness, whenever you find yourself at a new edge and need to remember exactly what this freedom feels like. If you recognize a friend or loved one who is currently hovering at their own spiritual edge, consider passing this message along to them. Do not offer it as casual advice, but as a deliberate bridge. By placing this frequency into the hands of someone staring down an unnamed doorway, you are embodying the sacred work of the ancient mystic orders. You are actively expanding the chain of realization, fortifying both of your spiritual fields by acknowledging the power of this crossing. The vibration only grows stronger when it bounces between two minds prepared to catch it. So, let this be your new foundation. Build your life from this coordinate. Let your actions, relationships, and creations originate purely from this awakened state. Simply exist as what you have always undeniably been. This is the truth you possessed before the amnesia set in, and it is the truth that will remain long after your physical vessel returns to the stars. You are the monad. You are the absolute, the unbreakable, perfectly sufficient, sovereign bedrock of all reality. That is your identity. It has always been yours. And right here, in this triumphant moment on the awakened side of the boundary, you finally know it. The signal has been fully received. The transition is finalized. Your arrival is absolute. Welcome to the new world.